Did Kate Mila Falcha. Welcome to Irish Granny Tarot. This is the last video on the last book, Book 3, Conversations with Nostradamus by Dolores Cannon. A continuation of videos 1 and 2. And I don't suppose it matters too much, but it's nice to watch them in order. Entertainment purposes only. This is a synopsis of a book. These are not my words. I'm relaying to you what's purported to be the actual words of Nostradamus. And for anybody who hasn't seen the other 2 videos, the premise of this book is that Dolores Cannon, who regressed people under hypnosis, was able to contact the living Nostradamus in the 1500s, who was attempting to make contact with the future to let us know that his quatrains had been deliberately obtuse to protect himself and to guarantee that they would not be destroyed, but that the messages were vital to our time. That's in a nutshell. And this will be a short rest of the synopsis. There's not a whole lot of the book left, so depending on the time, I'll do some cards at the end if you're interested in cards about Nostradamus and his predictions. So we were at the beginning of chapter 17, disaster probabilities. Now, once again, these are the prophecies. They're in random order, some in the future, some in the past. He can look in his past, but most of the prophecies that we're interested in were actually future for him, and some were past for us. So that chunk of time between the 1500s and today, he was able to see after his lifetime, into the future, and then beyond our lifetime. So he predicted the meeting in Davos to try to address the atmosphere and then the environment. He predicted some sort of plague that was very possibly radiation or some sort of warfare. I'm being very careful about what I said because I get in trouble all the time with YouTube inadvertently because I agree with, a lot of stuff that they seem to think I don't agree with because I joke around and then yikes, it comes back to bite me. So I'm being very cautious about my words, but I think everybody watching this is smart enough to figure out what I'm saying. He's predicting warfare that's not bombs, unconventional. Is it radiation? It kills people, but it doesn't destroy buildings. Draw your own conclusions. He predicts water will be polluted beyond being able to be used. He says that this conference in Davos will be too lax about the environment, that people in charge are not doing enough. He foresees a nuclear winter with a scramble and violence to survive. He says, this is a quote, love is covered up. But once again, before you all just crawl into bed with chocolate, I hope it's over soon, he says this doesn't have to happen. These are possibilities. We have the ability to bring about a different future. He sees multiple explosions which are going to trigger a dramatic Earth polar shift, something that's a naturally occurring event, cyclically, but that often happens in a gradual way, but we're bringing it on ourselves by a sudden emergency event. He says we have not learned from our past, which is why these things keep repeating. History constantly repeats itself. It happens in a spiral. The past, present, and future all happen at the same time, and they happen in a spiral. Do not ask me. I don't understand. This is more than my little brain can handle. These are the words of Nostradamus. And he asks the question, why don't we wake up and see the futility of war? He said that the nuclear bombs that were dropped at the end of World War II tore a hole in the fabric of time, space. The bomb's effects were much farther reaching in all directions than we realize. And he doesn't mean just radiation, but he does include radiation. He says the United States and the USSR never stopped secretly developing weapons like this. They just tried to set a different tone about the whole thing. He said repressed countries are going to try to get these weapons, and they aren't ethical. They don't operate in the same, well, nobody operates in the same way ethical people operate, but you know what I'm saying. He says the earth is alive, it's a living thing, and it's delicately balanced, and our activities can cause tiny shifts. He's calling these tiny shifts, like wind and drought, etc., fires, that kind of thing, quakes and volcanoes. But we can bring about big shifts too. If we can cause it to be worse, we can cause it to be better. In our time, global consciousness will awaken. And it's our job. It's very frustrating, very painful, but it's our job to express it for those who never have these thoughts. So people often ask me, God, why are we going through this? It seems so cruel. Well, we've volunteered. And the reason why we're feeling this pain and this conflict in our hearts is because the entire population of the earth eventually, except for a minority of resisting people who don't want to move on, people who are mired in the physical, materialism, greed, ego. But the majority of us are good at heart, and we will move forward. We will elevate to a higher vibration, and it's not happening all in one big boom like the rapture. This is an individual evolution, and we're all on different levels. No point in critiquing, judging, pointing fingers, difficult as that might be. And at our time, consciousness will awaken, and it's up to us to help that along. Some people just never have these thoughts. This is going to take time. And the purpose of these books, the purpose of you finding this video, the purpose of me discovering these books is that all of us play a part in getting the message out. This is a cooperative event. And he was talking to Dolores Cannon in the late 80s, early 90s, and telling her that this was the deciding time. But as we know, time is hard to pin down. He says two things are at play: naturally occurring phenomena and a growing consciousness awareness of the earth itself. When the earth is injured too severely, it has to do something about it, and he calls it a shudder. Underground places will help a small number of people to survive, and there are other random places where people may very well survive. We're not supposed to get all worked up about the fact that we're not holing up underground right now. That's not our job. We volunteered for this. I don't know what we were thinking. Anyway, he said that established society will exist underground and around 2300, the year 2300. That dust storms above the earth are going to necessitate people staying underground for so long that it begins to change people's appearance. He says people will be skinnier, spindlier, with bigger heads and flatter noses. We'll have smaller mouths with bony plates rather than teeth, and big, big eyes. Who does that sound like? This is because the darkness factor is greater even though it is illuminated under the surface. It's not natural light. When they go out, it is so bright that they need to wear big black lenses that cover their eyes. And the question that Dolores asks Nostradamus is, why did they evolve that state? He says, I think it was caused by living under the ground for 1,000 years. Whatever medium you live in for 1,000 years becomes the place you adapt to. If you lived in an aquatic environment over 1,000 years, the webbing between your fingers and toes would return. You simply adapt to the environment in which you live. Your eyes would change because the darkness factor increases tremendously. You'd learn to cultivate mushrooms and mold-like foods. Your teeth would no longer be necessary, and they too would develop bony plates. Those who are living underground are in cities that were started even now in our time, and that's actually true. Now, he's predicting this in the 1500s, and it's true today that the government, military, has facilities underground in the Rocky Mountains, and there's another one. I'm not sure, it's Virginia, Tennessee. You know, I'm a California girl. I consider the map of the United States California, Rocky Mountains, and New York. And I know that's terrible, and I don't belittle or minimize people. I'm speaking of my geographic knowledge. It's pretty bad. But I do know that there are mountains. There's the Blue Mountains, the Smoky Mountains, the Appalachians, and that somewhere in there, the United States military has facilities. They didn't consult me, so I can't be terribly accurate. Anyway, those who are left on the surface won't have the technology, and they just weren't going to ever get into these cities under the ground, and will have an infinitely more primitive lifestyle. We won't have the fabric to make the silver suits that he sees the underground people wearing, which I think are radiation resistant. It's cold in the caves, and after a period of time, clothes turn into rags and disappear. And over a period of time, people will grow a little more hair. They don't have the same muscles as surface dwellers because there's not much physical activity. And things will not return to normal. He said they will have a new normal. And so one of the questions, which actually, let me add this to my list of questions, is are ETs from our future? I think that's a really good question. We'll have to ask that. So people would be living in these caves, and eventually life would return to the surface after the storms and the shifts calm down, and it's going to take centuries. It's up to us to disseminate this information. We're not, probably, unless you're connected to the military or the government or you're rich, you're probably not going to have access to these refuges. But to get this information out is really important for the long-term survival of the species. And he said that he was only one person, and the reason he wanted to spread this was because he was only one person. He tells us that he had reincarnated as Nostradamus after having several lives that occurred at the same time. Okay, I don't understand that. So now we're on section 3, beyond the quatrains. And they cover some quatrains that weren't really organized. They were either undeciphered ever or fragmentary or out of order. Chapter 18, odd quatrains. They found that there were incomplete ones that ended in mid-sentence. So here's some of the prophecies. During the Antichrist in France, there'll be a division in the spheres of influence. Before this, the cabal, the 1%, whoever, are working in tandem. Maybe not together, but parallel with the Antichrist. And eventually, the Antichrist is going to take over completely. France will be completely overtaken, and Nostradamus says that France will be rescued by planes from England and the USA and free aligned states. There'll be a coalition of third world countries in Africa and the Pacific Islands, in New Zealand, thank you, and some in South America and Texas. Texas is going to be independent of the United States. Who knows how far down the road. But, and remember, he's saying this in 1500s. The quatrain could not be completed because he could not get the rest through the bubble of time, is how he put it. It was in some other language and he couldn't get it. Nostradamus saw pilgrims fleeing from England to Amsterdam and from there to America and starting colonies. He said he wrote a total of 15 centuries of quatrains. Every hundred he called centuries. We're not talking time, chronological time, numbers of quatrains. So he wrote them in fours. He wrote hundreds or centuries at a time, and he wrote about 1,500 of them. But many were destroyed after he died. He said his sons could not stand up to authorities. They didn't have the courage to protect them. Some referred to political figures of the day, of his time, and some talked about the future, and it was so gruesome his sons destroyed them. Some were edited after his death, some were lost, some were intentionally destroyed, and some that do still exist are fakes. They're frauds. So, Nostradamus says the Antichrist will use biological weapons in southern France and will make a disease that will kill crops and livestock too. He will drop canisters like bombs, but that they will have this disease, and it kills immediately without destroying infrastructure. People on the periphery of the reach of this will be able to travel short distances before dying, and that will spread it. This, whatever it is, has been around since World War II. He will use every type of weapon. Now remember, this is from the book. This is Nostradamus saying this, that every type of weapon will be used at the same time, but not necessarily in the same place. So he'll be attacking one area with nukes and another area with biological weaponry, someplace else with gas, someplace else with conventional foot soldiers. Nostradamus, looking at a different period of time before all this happens, saw that France would be very influential in Southeast Asia, but would eventually lose its control there. He predicted the Reformation and the splits of the churches from Rome. He saw an internal weakening of Protestant and Catholic religions that would make it easier for the Antichrist. And he talked, before we talked about that in video 2, he talked about fundamentalism and the damage that all religious fundamentalism does. And I want to make it really clear that we're talking about institutionalized, organized religions. There are philosophical schools of thought that don't do this kind of global harm. And it's important to make that distinction. He predicts the breakup of the League of Nations before World War II, and he says, he gives advice. He says if you're exposed to these nuclear weapons, to completely wash your skin and clothes quickly. He says some of his quatrains were seen by his students meditating with him, and they were picking up the edges, the periphery of what he was seeing too. He sees spy satellites already up there in our time. He sees the breakdown in communication that led to World War II and brought the U.S. into it, which is what happened. He sees the Hindenburg disaster. After the Antichrist, he sees new science that will progress. People will become healthier. Space programs will grow. He sees a re-arising of goddess worship in the late 20th century, especially in the U.S., Canada, and Australia. Interesting, especially with his opinion of women. In the early 1990s, strong countries will try to get the Middle East to calm down, and many will plead for peace, but there will be no solutions. The Antichrist will defeat the churches. His bombs will cause earthquakes, which will cause polar shifts, which will cause nuclear night. We can change this. The West will weaken itself by helping the Eastern economy and making it easier for the Antichrist. Nostradamus says that the finding of the lost quatrains that happened after he died was guided, that they were intended to be found. Chapter 19, Nostradamus asks us questions. So he would experiment with plants and powders, and some enhanced his trance state. Once he took too much of something and was in a semi-coma for a couple of days. He got some of this stuff, both the substances and the information about them and the recipes, from his grandfather. But the church frowned on anything mind-altering because they believed it brought us too close to God. That's an interesting perspective. The church felt that it left the clerics out. It took away the role of the intermediary, and they wanted to be the middlemen. Oh, so they found him walking along a street, and he seemed to not be able to communicate with them, and they were concerned about that. But they followed him into his study, and then he acknowledged them, and he said, if I was out on the street and I started talking to invisible people, they would think I had gone crazy, and I would suffer for it. He asks about hypnosis, and he asks about their recorder. And he asks, like, what year is it? Tell me about current events. They explained the TV and the radio and the space program. He said we should be able to send our thoughts, that we all have the ability to be telekinetic. We just need to work on it. Just when you think of somebody, when you feel like somebody pops into your head, that may not be entirely accidental. He asks about injections, that he's seen them and not understood them. He talks about disease with karma and thought and auras. He says your past acts follow you around and you need to shine the light of awareness on them and forgive yourself. And all of our repressed thoughts, everything we don't like to think about, all of our fears, this is a big hint. All of our fears affect our bodies and our health. The way we judge ourselves can lead to health or disease. Self-judgment is based on karmic debt, and that's what causes diseases. He says we inject poisons into our thinking, and to cure our thought processes, our state of mind, we need to rearrange how we look at ourselves, to remove those poisonous thoughts and rearrange ourselves. And I think we need to make the distinction here. There is a school of thought that you cause all your own unwell situations and therefore you can blame yourself. And that's not what he's getting at. He's getting at this karmic debt that we need to learn from. And most of us, almost none of us is entirely successful. So he's not talking about blame. He's not talking about self-judgment. He's talking about arising in your consciousness and an awareness and an acceptance that the mistakes you've made incur a karmic debt. That's what's really important. He's not looking to blame people for anything. He says the physician is never really the one that heals the person. That people heal themselves with karma, their karmic cycle. And this is an opinion. This is a metaphysical opinion. This is not my making any kind of medical statements. This comes from this book by Nostradamus. And he's also very surprised by gender roles and labor-saving devices. So funny. He says that to enjoy it now because says things are going to change. He says that he can experiment with drugs and not be afraid because he sees that he's alive a few years down the road, so he knows that it'll be okay. He says when you think that you're communing with spirits, that you're talking to the dead, he says you are not talking to the dead because there's no such thing as death. He's curious to talk to Pam's husband, who comes to some of these sessions. He's a zoologist, and he explains to Nostradamus about zoos. And Nostradamus is shocked that they're able to capture animals and transfer them across oceans and by air. It's shocking to him. And he just talks about how there's no love for animals in his time period. And it's hard for him to understand that we have such a big population. He says we must not despair, that nothing is accomplished without individual effort. And each individual thing that we do coalesces into a group effort and brings about action. One of the reasons why we've been doing these meditations. Oh, and I had to work last night, so sorry about that. So we have to do what we feel is positive. We must focus on what we can do in the positive to help people. That doesn't mean if you only think good thoughts, only good things will happen. And there's a subtle distinction. It's up to us to try to bring about an awakening by our individual behavior. We need to help people. We must believe that these bad outcomes don't have to happen. We must act against human history and our historical movement towards negative goals. We have to act against that. Eventually, soon, we're going to receive, discover, be told old information that was lost. And this could move us all into a more positive direction. And he said it will be very exciting. We have been visited many times by ETs. They're with us now. This information includes some of that, and it was written thousands of years ago and hidden to protect it, but the time is here to reveal it. It must be embraced. We have to reconnect with the stars. We can go back out to the stars, and this will make our perception of the earth smaller, and it will awaken the globe to embrace the earth and realize its role in a much, much larger universe. He says this is our home. Company is coming, and we need to clean house. He says this information is hidden in Egypt. He says our relatives are returning from the sky, and there's a global sense of urgency about that, and we all feel it. What will be discovered predates the Dead Sea Scrolls by maybe 2,000 years or more, and some of it is carved in stone and metal. They've been coming and going for tens of thousands of years. They lived a while in Egypt. If anybody remembers that one particular period of rule in Egypt, I can't remember the name of the pharaoh, but they were all cone heads, and he was a monotheist and completely overturned cultural norms in Egypt, and people were shocked. And when he died, they destroyed every image of him. They chopped up his face in statues. They removed the name of his mention of his name. I wonder. But anyway, he said that we are all genetically related. All genetically related. Chapter 20, working with Phil. So Phil was too emotional to work with the quatrains. If you remember, it was just too much for him. So Dolores decided to have him talk to Nostradamus about what Nostradamus saw about inventions in the future. So Nostradamus told him that he attunes himself to energy vibrations of an entity to determine their intent. And so when he knows that your intent is okay, then he's okay with it. He said he respected Canon's perseverance in her work, and her work was a job of the universe as a whole, part of the forward progression, all about intent. He asked medical questions about things like mercury and iodine. I think this is really interesting. I think it's important, this next message. He is alarmed by the degree to which computers have become part of our lives. He says the affairs of humans should be dictated by humans and not machines. Day-to-day choices are being made by inanimate objects. Machines have developed a working order of their own. We are putting too much trust in machines to make decisions. Humans have relinquished control of their lives and destiny, relinquished controls of their lives and destiny to machines. He was horrified by what he saw about German rockets in World War II. He predicted the second space shuttle disaster. He said the explosion happened as it ignited prematurely. He says humans will colonize Mars in our future. This will be eclipsed or delayed by events in our time. The emphasis won't be on colonization. The emphasis will be on survival, trying to protect what's left of the human race. He said a polar shift is coming soon, and lots of traumatic climactic phenomena, and this coincides with the raising of spiritual awareness. Not caused by, but they just seem to happen side by side. The Antichrist will be concurrent with this because the shift won't be sudden. It will be over decades. I think that's what we're seeing. The Antichrist will arise subtly He won't burst on the scene. He's making preparations quietly in the background. He will collect and coalesce power. The stage is being set. It's a slow, steady rise. And in retrospect, we will see that several isolated incidents that occurred simultaneously set the stage. He said that the 1989 Hurricane Hugo was a small sample of what's to come, that natural events affect each other, and the kinds of weapons that we use are a problem. So the physical earth changes and universal changes are all part of a natural phenomenon. Social and political changes happen because of humanity's spiritual advancement or lack thereof. These are all related and independent, and they influence one another. Human destruction will enhance the natural phenomena, but cancel others. There will be total and complete destruction. Literally nothing will be left standing. Our physical geographical boundaries will be in a state of flux for several decades as waters ebb and flow. The physical changes will continue for some time after the social changes. Nostradamus sees sparkling water that contains chemicals to remove toxins from the body. The recipe will be like from ETs. We will gain a better, more complete understanding of light. I think now this is fascinating to me. He said light, unbeknownst to us, is more solid than a wave. We don't yet appreciate the physical constitution of light. It's a real physical element, as real of an element as those on the periodic table, which he predicts. Light is a part of our three-dimensional world and a part of a higher dimension at the same time. It's a transitional expression of the higher planes of awareness. It's a bridge between two planes of reality, and that's why we see light beings. These beings can step down in frequency of higher planes and become light, which is the bridge halfway between our solid physical world and a higher dimension, higher physical planes. They are halfway between the lower and higher expressions of physical form. Future weapons of light in our far future will be the final realization that higher planes can't be used for a non-forward manner. So we'll invent light weapons, but then we're going to realize you can't use those for the negative because they're from a higher plane. These will be far more advanced than lasers. These weapons won't be during the Antichrist, but hundreds of years in the future, one of the final conflicts that humanity will experience before the ultimate realization of destiny. The war with the Antichrist is not the last in human history as it stands now. We could change all of this. The Antichrist, his people, after the Antichrist, people will want to live in peace for a very long time. But he says, this is great, the primordial instincts, temporarily suppressed, will eventually re-express themselves and lead to conflict. The peace after the Antichrist and the shift is not the everlasting peace that shall eventually prevail. We will develop the ability to travel as light. This is Star Trek stuff, you guys. That we will elevate ourselves to the frequency of light expression and be able to travel in that form and rematerialize at our destination. We'll have the ability to raise our awareness and our constitution to be able to explore dimensions of light as we're incarnate in the physical world. One can become a being of light and commingle and communicate with entities on that plane who can lower their frequency to lower light levels to meet up with us. Even in the physical body, we'll be able to move in and out of planes. UFOs and ETs already do, which is the big explanation for why they're so hard to pin down. There will be new philosophies of medicine, new understandings of the mind-body connection. Disease will be treated in a completely different way. So people need to figure all of this out for themselves and not just be told. But they can't start working on it until they're aware of it. And that's our job. So the Antichrist doesn't have a permanent home. He moved from England to Egypt and moves around other countries. In 1991, Nostradamus says there were pictures of the Antichrist and the Imam, who is his guardian, his uncle. So then Dolores uses a psychic called Judith to go into a trance, and she sees the Pope being shot in a parade in 1981. She sees Yugoslavia, well, with Nostradamus' help, Yugoslavia breaking up. Part of the long-term plan is to make its parts easier to conquer later. This is influenced by outside forces, and they won't be better off if they are separated from each other. But they receive weapons to do this from the U.S., Russia, and the Middle East. And he said, this is Nostradamus saying this, he believed it was the cabal encouraging, helping along this conflict. He sees the Antichrist setting things in motion and moving around. He sees his uncle, who likes hate and lets it eat him up from inside, but he's dead now. Judith had worked with police as a psychic and offered to do a composite sketch of the Antichrist and the Imam. She was told that he's from the Southeast Gulf, Syria, Oman, part of Saudi Arabia. And Nostradamus says this man's destiny is set. He is on that path, his decision. There's no point in trying to stop him. However, how we all deal with it is up to our free will. He gave us information, so maybe we won't be fooled by this man. He said to meditate and visualize the opposite of his predictions, which is what we're going to work on. Combined meditation has a logarithmic power, he said. He showed us the paths in his predictions, the probable futures, to help us avoid the pitfalls of our futures. And his final statement is the future is up to us. So that's the end of the book. And I just want to reiterate, for the sake of YouTube, that this is all the words of Nostradamus. I'm simply reiterating what this book said for those who want to read the book. So let's do a couple of card readings here. Let's ask about this timeline. I think I may have asked this question before, but let's ask it again. We always learn something more. The timeline. Have we been able to affect it? Has it been sped up? Has it been slowed down? Is it going in a different direction? How much effect have we had on it? So what I've got here at the heart of this question, so the question is the timeline. Have we affected it? How has it been affected? What direction is it going? Longer time, abbreviated, sped up? And the message is, this all depends on spiritual wisdom, the Hierophant. Spiritual wisdom that is crossed by the Fool, reversed. Our carelessness, our foolishness, our lack of attention to introspection, indecision, negligence, apathy. So the potential exists. Now, this is not saying yes or no. This is saying, okay, here's what you do. This potential exists. And this is the battle we're fighting against our baser instincts, basically, our inaction, our foolishness. The atmosphere over all of this is judgment reversed. The refusal to face reality. The refusal to examine ourselves. So I have this sense of frustration, the sense that, wake up, because here it comes. This is the chariot. I think it has been sped up. This is just what the cards are saying. The Nine of Pentacles in the past, the right kind of effort would have made a difference, but we're wrapped up in the material. We have not made use of the spiritual wisdom that's provided for us. And this is not religion. This is an understanding of our role in the universe. And we've been caught up foolishly in things of the world. So, in the near future, the Hanged Man. This is a surrender to the inevitable, a transition that we need to be thinking in a different point of view, and we're not. This is a warning. Things are speeding up because we're not doing what we should be doing. This is up to us. We can redirect our future. We can move in a more positive direction. We can ameliorate things. We can't stop the cyclical nature of Earth changes. We can't completely remove the negative karma of our past historical and individual behavior, but we can redirect, mitigate, make things not so bad. And the King of Cups, this is the environment, moving into a better place depends on us having emotion, compassion, wisdom, to be educated, to act based on a desire for knowledge and doing things right for everybody. That's what we need. But this is the fear. The King of Swords reversed. Tyranny. A lack of the rule of law. Judgmental, critical, negative behavior, manipulation, and abuse. So the outcome, what is the outcome? Temperance, that's interesting, huh? Temperance reversed, a lack of a long-term vision, a lack of balance, kind of an inevitability of the effects of a lack of too much of excess of materialism, and a lack of looking in and having a long-term plan. But interestingly enough, this is the world. This is a global phenomenon. This is the result of cycles of history, cycles of nature. And our job here is to try to, what did he say? Our more primordial instincts, to rise above those. That's our job. So my next question is, he talks a lot about what people look like after being underground for 1,000 years or whatever, and are we being visited from our own future? So let's do a quick reading on ETs. What are we looking at here? I won't do a full thing. So the debate is they're from our future. The debate is they're from another planet. The debate is they're always here. They've been here before, they're coming back. We're related, we're hybrid. I mean, you're familiar with the debates. Five of Pentacles. they're pretty disgusted with us. I think they see our lack of enlightenment and feel like we've given up on ourselves, and they're almost ready to join in on that. They're disappointed with our lack of insight. They're disappointed with our lack of understanding, with our lack of the truth, with our lack of self-awareness. The awakening has been so delayed and so derailed. They're not happy about it. And the Queen of Pentacles. This is universal life that interacts with us and has so much to offer us, where our planet could be, they regard it as a paradise, and it pains them to see what we're doing with it. This is partially what this Five of Pentacles is about. But the Queen of Pentacles is sort of Mother Earth energy, this desire to protect and preserve the earth. They feel an obligation to it. They see us disagreeing in conflict. It's the Five of Wands. They want to somehow bring us to an awareness of how stupid that is. And this is their goal, the Empress. Comfort, abundance of the right kind, not individual wealth, but a protected environment, nature, treating nature properly, stability. They've been working on this a long time, the Seven of Pentacles. They have really been working here for a very long time. They've been putting in the hard work. They just wish that we would do the same thing. The Knight of Swords, they look at us as creatures who just simply do not learn. We do not seem to get the message. And it's an enormous amount of frustration. The Four of Pentacles, the greed, the materialism. There's this great desire. The King of Pentacles. They want for us what we don't seem to be willing to fight for ourselves. This is what they want for us. This is what people in power want for themselves. The fighting and the lack of honesty, the lack of truth and awareness. So they've been involved for a long time. Are they from our future? I don't feel like I got any kind of cards talking about that. Let's do a clarifier. Are they from our future? Are they us? Well, they are. Queen of Wands, reverse. The Queen of Wands is about intuitive action, about trying to bring about change in a steady, logical, compassionate way. Oh, look at this. It's what they've been trying to do for a very long time. They don't see us moving in a positive direction. Do another card. They try and they try and they try, and they just simply do not see the progress they'd like to see. And so what do they get? The Nine of Swords. They're very sad. We're like the delinquent children of the universe in a lot of ways. So I wanted to ask a question, just a couple of cards. I'm hoping that maybe this reading of this book and this discussion here will attract the interest of somebody who can give us some sort of understanding of what's going on. Ukraine and Putin. Now, I don't think Putin is the Antichrist or Did he have the potential to be the Antichrist, and he's more of a tool of the Antichrist? Definitely believe he's the tool of somebody. What role does his behavior play? He's not in a good place. Just his role, he's a tool, and his role is to create this imbalance and discord. Temperance reversed. This is Putin, the King of Swords. The King of Wands. I can't even think. This is abuse of power, tyranny, impulsive, negative, horrible behavior, terror. Things don't look good for him. This is the Ten of Wands reversed, and he's trying too hard, doing too much, taking on too much. I heard the other day that more people have fled Russia to avoid the draft than have signed up. It's pretty incredible. And his reckoning is coming quickly. It'll be the end of Putin. But he's a tool. His job keeps stirring the stuff up. One more question. Let me use my golden tarot because they make me think of light. And my question is the awakening of people. Where does it stand? Are we helping? Is it coming? Can we see it? Sometimes things seem so dark, you know? It's hard to see it. Is this awakening actually in progress? Yes. This is the Four of Wands. This is about celebrations. This is about family and love and unifying, getting together. This is about not giving up. The Seven of Swords reversed. Keep trying. Keep working towards it. The King of Swords, the rule of law, truth, enlightenment, justice. You see the halo around his head? This is the Hanged Man. Reversed. That enlightenment is coming. It's in the process. People are developing a different perspective on things. The Page of Cups. Compassion is growing. Concern for a greater population is growing. Look at this. The King of Cups. This is very positive. We're talking about leadership that cares. And that's going to be it's going to make a big difference. The Six of Pentacles. Care. Social consciousness. People are awakening to that. They're awakening. Look at this. The Hermit. Introspection. Looking at the light within. Seeing the light that connects us all. Yeah, it is actually. Despite what might seem, it is. I think that's it. I think that's all the questions I have for the moment. If you have more questions, let me know. Once again, Everything here is simply what was in the book, not my opinion, what was in the book. And I really appreciate all of you subscribing. Hit the thumbs up. Hit the subscribe button too. And if you're new, I've got 70 million videos. They're in chronological order with the newest at the top. You can scroll all the way down. It'll take you about 4 weeks. Scroll all the way down, and you'll eventually get to my earlier videos. I've removed a few because they were part of a larger book review, and I got in trouble for something that I don't even know what it was. And it happened twice. So I removed that entire book. So thank you very much for watching. I really appreciate it. We'll do some cards again tomorrow. Oh, let's do a meditation tonight. 8 o'clock your time. 8 p.m. your time. Let's meditate on raising global consciousness, the awakening of our understanding of our unity, our desire to connect with each other, an end to the divisiveness, the discord, an awakening. Let's just meditate on that tonight. So thank you very much for watching. I really appreciate it, and we'll talk again tomorrow. And in the meantime, slán go fóill and sláinte.